Hey everyone, Mark Meckler here, and I'm excited to introduce this video. I know that I don't get that often of a chance to be on the road with Rick Santorum and hear him make a full speech or a full presentation in front of an audience. He's out in one place, I'm out in another place, and I know most of you aren't out traveling around with us either, so you didn't get to see him live. This is an incredible speech that Rick Santorum gave at a grassroots event in Annapolis. So I'm going to sit back. I'm probably going to pop a soda water and maybe some popcorn. And I'm going to watch Rick. And I know I'm going to learn something. I hope you do as well.
I would now like to introduce our keynote speaker. Probably doesn't need any introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. He represented us in the House of Representatives 2 terms. Then he went on to be a senator for 2 terms. Then he ran for president twice in 12 and 16. And in 12, that's when you won the Iowa caucuses and 10 or a dozen additional states. Personally, I'm a little bit of a fanboy of this gentleman because of his reputation on the right to life. And I just think his courageous leadership on that issue and others is just absolutely fantastic, and I am still in awe every time I'm with you, Rick. I try not to be, but I am. Please welcome Rick Santorum.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you. The legislators in particular, thank you all for coming. I know what your schedules are like, and to take the time to spend here is very, very gracious of you. And I know all the volunteers here really appreciate your dedication to what you do. But to make the time to come here is really special. So thank you very much for that. I actually have some news that you don't even know. That I just found out about an hour ago, but I was keeping it from you to make the big announcement here today. There has been, we are at 19 states, and we've sort of been stuck on 19, I'll be honest with you, for a couple of years now. But we got some good news today in the state of Kansas. We have passed the state of Kansas multiple times, but it wasn't good enough. And the reason it wasn't good enough, when I say passed, we had a majority of votes in both the House and Senate, and we were able to pass. But each time we passed, we were told we didn't pass, because there's an amendment to the Constitution in Kansas that came from a citizen's petition that added a requirement that on all Article 5 resolutions required 2/3 votes of each chamber. Now, that is not constitutional, because the states can't limit a constitutional provision through their own constitution. And so we decided that when we kept working with them, but we came close. In fact, this year, the Senate passed by 2/3, but we didn't have 2/3 in the House, so we've sort of been sitting there. But we filed a suit last year basically saying that the Kansas provision is unconstitutional. We filed it last fall and did the briefings, and the judge has sat on it for a year, federal district court judge, sat on it for a year, and we thought, they could technically could sit on it forever. And if you push him, you don't want to push a judge, because you know how that could work out, right? Well, he issued his decision today, and we won up and down 100%. So the court has found Kansas's constitutional limitation unconstitutional under the federal Constitution. And so when the Kansas legislature goes back into session, they are a biannual session. So it doesn't have to pass the Senate again. It is sitting on the calendar on the floor of the House right now. When they go back in session, they will pass it, and Kansas will be the 20th state that passes COS. So I thought I'd pass that word on today. That's pretty exciting. I get chills when I think about that, and hopefully provide some momentum for some other states. We've got a few other states, North Carolina in particular. North Carolina, we've passed the House repeatedly, And we are convinced we have the votes in the Senate, but the leadership has refused to bring it up. I know you guys don't know anything about that, but and the leadership says, oh yeah, we're for it, but they don't bring it up. And so hopefully maybe with this Kansas situation we can get North Carolina to be 21. We also have a great chance in Ohio. We believe, again, we have votes in both the House and Senate to pass, but the leadership, particularly in one body, has been a bit recalcitrant, and so it's been a bit of a grind. But hopefully, again, we can get some things moving. But I didn't come here to talk about that, although I certainly knew you'd want me to talk about that. It's great news. I came here to tell you that I have a particular gift that I want to share with you. And it's an extraordinary gift that I take a great amount of pride in. And my gift, my special power, my superpower, is that I listen to what my political opponents have say, and I believe them. That's my superpower. Because most people in America hear what Zoran Mondami and all these other people say, and they think, oh, well, they're not. I believe them. When they tell me they're going to do the things that they want to do, that means they're actually going to try to do the things that they want to do. Now, you probably know that more here in Maryland. It's probably not a superpower here in Maryland because they just go ahead and do them. But I wanted to share that with you, that for a long time, I have been I don't want to give a biblical reference, but sort of, a man crying out in the wilderness and being vilified for doing so. I wrote a book back in 2004 called It Takes a Family. It was in response to a book by somebody you might have heard of called It Takes a Village. So Hillary Clinton wrote that book. I felt like, and when it was a call, if you read the book and read through it, I looked at it and I said, okay, she's basically calling for a more of a socialistic, communistic form where the village is, of course, the government, right? To take care, we all take care of each other. No, it's the government that's taking care of it. And so I said, no, it doesn't take a village, it takes a family. That's the basic building block of society, not the government. And I talked at the time, I said how the left, this was early 2000s, the left has taken over every single institution of government, every institution in America that matters, except two. Now, everybody now, if I say this, you'll say, oh, well, yeah, we know that. But back then, this was really controversial stuff. I said, they took over, obviously, the colleges, universities, everybody knew that, but most people didn't recognize how bad it was. Now you do. But back then, they didn't. But I did because I went. I was going to colleges, universities, speaking as much as Charlie Kirk was back when I was the senator. I went everywhere, all over the country, and spoke not just in my state, which I did a lot of, but I know that college and university are the breeding ground for new ideas, but they're also the training ground for the next generation of leaders for America. And they were toxic. How do we have the situation today in America where most people have no idea of the history of our country, no idea of the founding principles of our country? I was at Yale University 3 weeks ago, and I spoke. It was the week after Charlie Kirk was shot, and I was supposed to speak at Yale, and my wife bought me a bulletproof vest. I'm not exaggerating. She did, because she was so scared. She goes, you can't go. And I said, I'm going. So she, unbeknownst to me, I said, I'm not wearing it. I said, I'm not going to cower to these folks. And so I went there, and I was asked to talk on the issue of prayer and prayer in school. And I'm not for prayer in school, but they asked me to talk about it. It's called the Yale Political Union. It's a debating society. Two little tidbits from that experience. I met with all of the parties. There's 6 political parties. And it's modeled after Cambridge and Oxford. And they bring every week or every couple of weeks during the semesters, they bring speakers in to debate political topics. The week before was Lila Rose talking about abortion, right? And so I came in talking about prayer. And so I met with these folks, and I had done this 13 years ago. Right after I ran for president in 2012, I went to Yale and spoke at the Yale Political Unit, and my topic was the government should support the nuclear family. A man-woman nuclear family, right? 2,000 kids showed up for that, all right? Here, about 250, 300 kids showed up. And so I get up there and I said, well, let's talk about prayer in school. Let's pray. So I started out with prayer, which was sort of funny. And then I just said these words. I said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How many of you in this room don't agree with that statement? And about 15 hands of the 250 or 300 went up. About 15 hands. I thought, oh, okay. And I said, just so I understand, how many of you out here don't believe in God? Half the room raised their hand. Okay? And I said, okay, you need to square something with me here. When I read that statement about God-given rights, only 15 of you said you didn't agree. How can you believe in God-given rights and not believe in God? I said, there's something wrong here. And I said, just curious, can any of you tell me where that phrase comes from? 250 people at Yale University who are here to hear a political talk. Not a single hand went up. Not a single hand went up. And I said, wait, raise your hand if you think you know where that comes from. 20 hands. 20 hands went up. And so I thought, okay, I'll pick on the guy in the front row. So I just pointed to the guy in the front row and he froze. He couldn't answer it. And while he was babbling, somebody shouted out, Declaration of Independence. So you want to know the level of education, civic education that is going on in the highest, these are going to be the folks who are going to run the country. Okay? And here's the other thing I found out, second bit of information. There's 6 political parties. When I was there back in 2012, the largest political party of the 6 was called the Liberal Party. Okay? And then, there were 3 on the left, 3 on the right. That's usually how they do it. Or maybe 2 and 1 in the middle and 3 on the other side. Right now, there's still 6 political parties. The ones on the right are the same. The 3 are the same. The one on the left, it went from 3 to 2. There's now an independent. But there's now only 2 political parties on the left. And one of them is not the Liberal Party. It doesn't exist anymore. It was the largest 12 years ago. It doesn't exist today. There's the progressive and the leftists. You want to know the state of the left in America? Their liberals are gone. They don't exist. People who accept the basic premise of a republic, free and open elections, and First Amendment, constitutional protections to speech and assembly and all those things, they're gone. It's now the progressives and the left who reject most of what the Constitution stands for. That is the state of the political opponents, and you saw it this week. Zoran Mandami is not an aberration. He is a culmination. And it started, in my mind, when I wrote that book back in 2004, because of the institutions in America that have been captured by the left. People say, what's happened? Why did this happen? How did we get here? Not overnight. The left universities, they took it over. Well, when the left takes over the universities, and everyone says, it's so bad now. No, it's been so bad for decades. For decades, this is happening. Yes, it started mostly at the elite universities, but it's been bad everywhere for decades. They train the next generation of leaders in this country, of journalists, of people who make movies, of business leaders. And so is it any surprise that our educators who are trained at these institutions have now created public and primary and secondary education that are now completely dominated by the left? That's not recent. This woke stuff is not recent. This has been going on. We only found out about it because of COVID, and kids got homeschooled and got to see what our kids were being taught. I wrote about it 20 years ago. And I talked about what was happening in the classroom, how it was taken over. I talked about how business, which used to be conservative and Republican. Why? Because we were an industrial economy. We're not an industrial economy anymore. We're an information technology economy. Our wealth isn't spread across America in small towns with factories and businesses all over America. They're in the coasts. They're in big cities with big tech. And they're all left. Every single one of them. They don't live in small town America. They don't live and work with blue collar people. And that happened not now, it happened 25 years ago with the tech revolution. Republicans used to outspend Democrats 2-1. Now we're lucky if we get outspent 2-1. Why? Because all the money's on the left. All the business groups are on the left. That's not just now. It was 25 years ago when I wrote about it, but nobody paid attention. Hollywood. Do you know Hollywood used to be conservative? Used to be patriotic? They had something called the Hays Code. Did you ever watch Mary Tyler Moore? Not Mary Tyler Moore, Dick Van Dyke? Yeah. Did you see that Rob and Laura had separate beds? If they were ever in the bedroom, sitting on the bed together, each of them had to have 1 foot on the floor? True. There was a code. Went out in the 1960s. Hollywood got taken over by the left. I don't know who it was, but some great philosopher in the past said, "Give me the storytellers and I will control the nation in a generation." Who is telling the stories to our children and have been for 50 years? A news media. Oh, Donald Trump finally said, "Oh, it's fake news." Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fake news for all my lifetime. You say, well, at least Trump had the courage to go out and take them on. Yeah, he did, because it was a different generation, thank God. And this is one of the things I'll tell you guys. Conservatives have never had it so good when it comes to getting information out to our constituents. Never. When I ran for office in 1990 for the first time, I had 2 ways to get my information, 3 ways actually, to get my information out. I could stand on a street corner and yell it, or knock on somebody's door. I could give a speech and hope the press would cover it. And they would, of course. Oh, by the way, most of the time, the press kills you not by what they say about you, it's by not saying anything about you. That really, you talk about suffocating. And that's what they did to conservatives forever. But there was no talk radio when I ran for it. I couldn't go on talk radio and talk about it. The only way I could get my message out clearly, directly to voters, I had to pay for it. That was it. And so people said, well, why didn't conservatives fight back then? And there was a saying among conservatives, which is, do not pick a fight with someone who buys ink by the barrel, because you will lose. And so it's not that we didn't want to fight, and I like Donald Trump, but I don't like his and others' criticism of previous politicians saying they didn't fight. You can't fight if you have no weapons And you are looking at a guillotine if you do. You have to try other methods. But now, we have, do you know the largest share of voice on social media is conservative? By far, not even close. Why? Because we tell the truth. We use reason. Actually, it's very appealing. No one likes to listen to the left just scream all day long and feel all day long. It's not good television. It's not good social media. And so I just say to legislators and others, for those who say that we need to do something about social media, stop. Don't let the government, you may say, well, it's only that, don't let the government have any say on what's on social media, period. It may say, well, we want to stop pornography. No, there are already laws against that type of stuff on social media, and they may not be enforced, but they're laws. But giving government the ability to control is a death knell for what is the best period of time we've ever had in our country as far as conservatives is concerned. So I give you that I wrote this book back in 2004, and I said, there's only 2 institutions left in America, and the left is going to spend the next 20 years, I said, to destroy both of them. And what were the 2 institutions? The church and the family. And what have they done? That was before Lawrence versus Texas. It was before Obergefell. It's when I was fighting to get a constitutional amendment to institutionalize marriage in the Constitution of one man and one woman. And the argument against me back in 2004 when I led that fight, I was a bigot and a hater. The only reason I'm doing this is because I hate gay people, because gay marriage will never be legal. That I'm just doing it because I'm a hater. And they knew, all of them knew. Barack Obama knew when he ran for office and said he was not for gay marriage. He was for gay marriage. They were all for gay marriage. They were all for gay marriage. Because as soon as it happened, they folded up like a cheap suit and went away. We didn't fight. In fact, the conservative world, and that's just the family, and of course you see the church. The assault on the church culminated by COVID, when they shut churches down. And they try to privatize religion. Oh, and during the Obama administration, you may not remember, he changed his language from freedom of religion to freedom of worship. So you can go in your own church, but just don't bring it outside the church. The assault on both has been devastating. You saw what Yale University was with respect to the number of people who believe in God, but that's not just Yale. The lowest percentage of Americans in American history now believe in God or are practicing any kind of faith. That doesn't happen by accident. A few years ago, we tipped now that a majority of American children are being raised in homes without a father. Marriage has been destroyed. Why? Because marriage doesn't mean anything. Marriage just means the love between 2 people. Has nothing to do with children. So why have children? We have the lowest birth rate in American history. We are dying as a country. At this rate, America will eventually disappear. We won't be a great and powerful nation. Those nations grow. We are not. You see, I heard what they were going to say, what they wanted to do. I believed them. I warned against it, and everybody yawned. Or no, they actually were outraged that I would even say such a thing. So here's what's going to happen. The Democrats are going to continue to go full-on leftists. They're not going to stop at socialism, because that's a way station. Just like leftism and progressivism was a way station to socialism. Socialism is a way station. It ends up with tyrannical power. And it happens gradually. I could give a long speech about how that's going to happen, but I'm going to focus down on us. How did we get to this point so far? Well, let's just be honest. Most Americans are doing pretty good. Even those you would say are not doing well, compared to the rest of the world, doing pretty good. Right? The poorest people in America would be the wealthiest people and the folks who have the most circumference in 90% of the world. So I understand poverty. I understand food stamps and hunger, but our problem is not malnutrition, it's obesity. They make a claim, oh, well, we need to do this, we need to do this for people. That's just because our country has lost its soul and what's important. And we think we can shove them full of sugar and that people will be happy. So we just keep giving more sugar. And so we can make people satisfied. And we promise them even more goodies. The reality is that it's working. It has worked. They have taken every step. Every institution has been taken over. Everything that I laid out has happened. And what did we do about it? Nothing. Damn near nothing. Why? Because life is pretty good. Okay, yeah, we lost this, or yeah, I don't have that freedom anymore, or yeah, we're killing babies, or yeah, marriage has been destroyed, yeah, we're not having children anymore. Yeah, my life's pretty good. Yeah, it is. I mean, your life's pretty good. And so you just think, okay, I'll just sort of hunker down. And you look at your own family, and your kids don't believe what you do. We're right in America, we don't even fight for the souls of our children. But we don't. Our kids are less religious than us. Why? Because we didn't fight. You say, well, I tried. Did you? Did you really fight like their souls depended on it? Oh, my kids will come back around. We have been apathetic. We have not been courageous. You all heard the Charlie Kirk quote before he died, the interview. How do you want to be remembered? I want to be remembered as someone who is courageous, fighting for my faith. We have a lot of people who have a lot of great qualities and characteristics. We believe the right things, but we don't have the courage to fight for them. Go and watch the clips from Mondani's rallies, AOC's and Bernie's rallies. They're on fire. They're on fire. They'll run through a brick wall for this stuff. Where are we? What are we doing? Ladies and gentlemen, you lose America by apathy, not by some cataclysmic transformation. We lose it because we stopped fighting for the things that we know are true. Why I decided to join COS is because it has one of the largest grassroots armies in America, focused on doing the right thing, which is defanging the power of the federal government, cutting off the ability for the left to take over. That's what this does. It's a process, a bottom-up grassroots process that stops the left from culminating in what will be the collapse of America into a totalitarian, socialist, communist, name it, state. And we have to have the courage to fight for it. But I say this, and I certainly encourage you to do everything you can to help Convention of States. But I say to people at every meeting, which is, first, fight for your family, fight for your children, fight for the people you love, and make sure they know the truth, and make sure they know that you love them in telling them, not because you're punishing them or criticizing them. It's because you want them to have the blessing of the truth.
Amen.
So I know I'm in a blue state. Most of you are here from blue states. And you say, well, we don't have any chance of passing COS. You're not going to have any chance of passing anything unless you change hearts and minds of the people that you deal with every single day in your own life, in your own community, in your own church, including your own pastors. We need leaders. I've laid out a pretty dire scenario for America, right? And you say, wow, this is a real downer. No, not at all. Not at all. I'm 67 years old. I've been doing this for over 40 years. I got elected to the Congress when I was 32. I've run for everything. Lost most of the time. People say, why are you still doing this? Well, most of you are about my age or maybe a few years younger. Do you realize you're going to be in the history books potentially as the generation that lost America? How does that sit with you? I know in my case, I can't speak for you, but I was actually at the party. I was there. I was leading. I was fighting, but I was losing. And as a conservative, I don't believe in participation trophies. I can't say, well, you know, I tried. No, sorry, doesn't work for me. And so here I am. And here I'll be until they put me in a box. Because I'll be damned if I'm not going to do everything I can for my children, 8 of which, my 10 plus 2 on the way grandchildren, the oldest of which just turned 4. I'll be damned if I'm not going to fight to my dying breath to save this country for them.
That's right. Amen.
So I would just say, people say, well, what can I do? And I said, well, I'll tell you about me. I mean, I ran for office, I was doing all this things, but I'll be honest with you, most of it early in my career, I was doing because I was ambitious. I was good at something. I could give some good talks. I could articulate issues pretty well. I could motivate people to support me. But I really didn't know why I was there. It wasn't really until I came to the Senate where I really reconnected in my faith, put God in the center of my life. I don't work for this kingdom, I work for the next kingdom.
Amen.
So I don't worry about the consequences of this kingdom losing. I may have lost, at least I thought I lost, but you know what? God has used so many defeats for victory, I just figure it's just one of them. I don't worry about winning and losing. I worry about standing for the truth and fighting and doing everything you can do. And so I would say to all of you, what can you do? I don't know. I don't know what you can do. I don't know you. But God does. Ask Him. I found out in my life, the closer I got to God, the better I understood what He wanted from me. I think He speaks in whispers. Get close. Ask. Pray. God, what do you want me to do? How can I make a difference? For you, first of all, but for the country that you so blessed. He'll give you an answer. Listen. Take some quiet time and listen. And then have courage. I had the privilege of meeting 2 saints in my day who have been canonized by the Catholic Church. Mother Teresa and John Paul II. Both were inspirations to me, particularly John Paul. His favorite phrase was in the Bible, be not afraid. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of being embarrassed You afraid of being persecuted? Last Sunday at Mass, they read the Beatitudes. I love the Beatitudes. You know why? I know this is so prideful, but because you have all these Beatitudes, and then at the end, you have 2 Beatitudes for people who are willing to stand up and be persecuted for righteousness on behalf of the truth and on behalf of Him. 2 reserved for folks like you who are courageous enough to suffer the persecution for Him and for the truth that He taught. What are you afraid of if you're doing what He's calling you to do? You think the world is going to outgive God? You will be blessed. It may not be here, but you're only going to be here for a short period of time anyway. Look for those blessings. Yeah, it's a tough time. Maybe one of the toughest times in American history. And when I think about that, you know what I say? Thank you, God, that you put me here at a time when you need saints. You need people of courage to make a difference. I could have lived in the 1950s and gone to the soda fountain and just lived a great life where everybody loved God and their neighbor and everything. That would have been great, but He gave me the chance to make a difference for Him, to be a warrior for Him at a time when it can make a difference. Praise God. God bless you. Can we do some Q&A?
Well done, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, if anybody has questions about anything, let me know. And if you legislators have to leave, I certainly understand if everybody's got to go. So,
I have a question.
yes, ma'am.
In this day and time, I want to know truly how wise it is to pursue a convention of states. If we get there, how many people are going to have the resolve to make sure that we put forth what we want the convention of states truly to do?
Yeah, I'm not the least bit concerned about that for many reasons. Number one, the founders were pretty smart. They made the process the hardest thing to do in American government. Amending the Constitution is the hardest thing to do. Requires the greatest amount of consensus. Not things, remember, the greatest amount of consensus of anything that can be done in America. How much is done in America by consensus right now? So I always tell people about convention of states. We're not in a time when big things are going to happen at convention of states. I know people are talking about balanced budget and things like that. I'm not. I'm talking about little things that can have big impact. And I use this example. And so I don't worry about running off the rails or doing this and that. Anything that comes out of that convention has to get 38 states to ratify. And if you look at it, there are probably 34 states that are marginally red or purple. But to get to 38, and I'm looking at the states, probably a state like Maryland's going to have to pass it. Because Connecticut's not, Rhode Island's not, New York is not, right? Massachusetts is not. I mean, just go through all the other blue states, Illinois, maybe Illinois, I don't know. But it would have to be a state like a Maryland or a Delaware or an Illinois. I mean, because California's not, Oregon's not. I mean, I'm just saying, and think on the other side. There are almost twice as many red states as there are blue states, which means you'd need to have like 15 blue states, 16 red states to pass anything bad. Not going to happen, right? As tribal as we are, nothing will happen. So you'd say, well, wait a minute, why are you doing this? Because there are some things that could happen that could have very important consequences on multiple levels. Number one, having the convention. Having the convention shows Washington, D.C. that the states can get their act together and actually, because you remember, at the founding, if you look at the Constitution, the states were at the top of the food chain. They created the federal government. They were the ones who were supposed to control everything. When it came to the average American, they had to have the federal government for national security and foreign affairs and interstate things, but their role was very limited. Read the Constitution, very limited role. And they set up a structure to make sure that it would stay that way. How did it not stay that way? Constitutional amendments. The biggest one, the 17th Amendment. So people say, well, don't mess with the Constitution. Too late. It's been messed with. It isn't what the founders gave us. If it was what the founders gave us, we would be where we were in 1917, which is Washington was a backwater town that had no influence on anybody's lives in America. That's just true. It was nothing. Everything was done with you guys. How do we get back to that? Well, somehow, initially, you start, again, we didn't get there overnight. We're not going to get back there overnight. You start by reasserting your authority. And that authority is placed in Article 5, Section 2. And since you gave up, the legislature gave up one of their authorities, the principal one, which is to appoint senators, you still have this one, use it. The country needs you to use it. Everybody needs a boss. And for America for a long time, that boss was God. He ain't around anymore for most folks in Washington. So they need another boss. Always is the case. Break glass in case of emergency. We got one. And so having the convention, getting 34 states to agree, having the convention will send shockwaves to Washington, D.C. Whoa, wait a minute. What are they doing? Who do they think they are? They're not going to get anything done. Probably not much. But you know what they have done? They will have set the precedent that they can do it. And all the people, and you'll hear them, oh, this could happen, that could happen, terrible thing, all these things. None of those things will happen. And all of a sudden you say, wow, this process is actually pretty reasonable, pretty safe. You guys mess up again, we will do it again. Right? You guys don't handle this problem, we'll come back. And maybe we'll have more consensus of the American public that we can do something bigger. But what can they do originally? Number one, they can do it. Number two, they can have a national debate about federalism, because that's what this will be about. It'll be the most covered event of a government action in maybe our lifetime. Everybody will be having amendments to the Constitution they want to talk about. This process isn't going to be like a weekend. It'll be months. They'll have testimony. They'll have hearings about what federalism is and what's the role of the federal government, how the federal government is overreached. You'll have high schools in America have to teach the Constitution. Civic literacy will go like this. It's worth doing it just for that. Third, you'll get amendments. And you'll get amendments, in my mind, if I'm around, I'll certainly do my part to make sure this happens, that are things that are reasonable and consensus. I was a member of the House of Representatives and part of I was a Newtonian who planned the revolution in 1994. I was a House member. We had our Tuesday morning meetings with Newt in the basement of the Rayburn building to plan the contract with America. You know what was the central guiding principle in the contract with America? Anybody know? What? Nope. What was the central guiding principle? Anything that was in the contract with America had to have at least 75% approval in America. People say, oh, this great revolutionary document. No, actually it wasn't. It was common sense things that the American public wanted, and we said we're for them. That's why it was so popular. That's why it made sense. And that's what's going to happen here. I would suggest we don't pass anything that doesn't have 70 to 80% approval among Americans, because then we're just wasting our time, because 67% of American legislatures have to pass it. Excuse me, 3/4, 75. What am I saying? 75% have to pass it. So why would you pass anything that doesn't have at least 75% of the American public behind it? Right? So, but you don't have a chance otherwise. So what could you pass? I use this as an example, but I think it is the most important thing that this convention can do. And that is limit the Supreme Court to 9 members. Here's what I believe will happen. Everybody's talking about the filibuster, right? What's his face? Trump wants to get rid of the filibuster. That is, with a capital S, stupid. Okay? And I can spend an hour talking about the filibuster. I know a little bit about it. But he wants to get rid of the filibuster. Let me tell you, if the Democrats get power back and there's no filibuster, here's what they will do. First, they will pack the court. They will add 4 justices to the Supreme Court. They will have a majority on the Supreme Court. Second, they will admit D.C. and Puerto Rico as states, and maybe another place where they know that they can win, to make sure that the Senate stays in their hands as long as possible. Third, they will pass a voting rights bill that will control all federal elections, and the voting procedures will be like California, to create maximum opportunity for fraud. Next, D.C. will pass a gun ban. It will go to the Supreme Court, it will be upheld, and you will lose your Second Amendment. You also start losing your right to speak because the court will control it. You think I'm kidding? I am not. Remember, I hear what the left says they want to do, and I believe them. They have said they want to do all these things. Believe them. There is no way to stop them if we don't limit the court to 9 members. And we need to get to it. Okay, we're going to be at 20 here soon. We got to get to 34 before Chuck Schumer, although I think he's going to be gone after this next election, before the Democrats get back control of everything. That gives us to 2028, hopefully longer. But we need to move. We need to move, because if we don't, they will, and then you won't have the chance to move. It'll be too late. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. You say, well, what do you mean? Well, you could pass an amendment that would put it back to 9. Good luck getting blue states to do that. They wouldn't do it. Maryland, they'd never do it. Could Maryland, right now, if it's set the way it is, would Maryland approve limiting the Supreme Court to 9? Maybe. I mean, the media would be for it, because they say, yeah, you don't want to get into that fight. When Schumer brought it up before, they said, no. It was a pretty big backlash from pretty much across the board. It's a bad idea. It won't be once they do it. They won't care. Here's what the left believes, which is, Nancy Pelosi said it, when they passed Obamacare, they were told, you're going to lose the House and Senate. Yeah, we will. We know that. That's okay. Once we put it in, they'll never get rid of it. And we'll get back in power. They'll do all these things. Oh, they may lose. But again, it'll be normalized. Everything will be okay. And Republicans had a chance to get rid of Obamacare, and then with a simple majority vote, we couldn't do it. Everybody says, "Oh, Republicans do all this stuff." Look, here's the reality of the filibuster. I give you literally an hour dissertation. I'll give it to you in a couple sentences. It is easier to get votes to give people free stuff than it is to get votes to take away the free stuff that has already been given. So if you make it easy for both sides to pass bills, they win. They win. There's only been 3 times, okay, I'll give it a little longer. 3 times in the history of our country since 1917 when, 17th Amendment was passed in 1912, right? But the first election was in 1914 for the United States Senate after that. Only a third of the Senate was up. So a third were properly elected, 2/3 were not. They didn't change the rules. You know what the rule was before 1917? There was the filibuster, but there wasn't anything called cloture to end debate. Prior to 1917, do you know how many senators it took to get a vote on the floor of the United States Senate? All of them. Every senator had to agree to vote or there was no vote. You know why things are small in Washington? Third of the Senate in 1914, 1916, now 2/3 of the Senate is controlled by those Democratic elected. They get sworn in, they change the rules. They put in cloture. Why? Because they had to get elected. They had to do stuff. They had to pass stuff. They had to grow Washington. And that's where cloture came into effect, and it was the time 2/3 of the Senate had to agree to vote. That went down to 60% in 1975. How many times in the history since 1917 has one party had a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate and the House and the presidency? How many times? Anybody know? 3 times. All 3 times, Democrats. Republicans have never had supermajority control in the United States Senate since 1917. Okay? What happened during those 3 times? Anybody know?
One of them was the New Deal.
The New Deal. Social Security, welfare, all sorts of government programs and payments. Second, Great Society, Medicare, Medicaid, welfare. Third, Obamacare. You want to know what the Democrats will do? There you go. Every year. Every year, how we're going to give more. How do we know that? Well, look at what goes on here in Maryland. Right? Here's the difference. People say, well, look, the states don't do that. Yeah, but the states have to balance their budgets. The federal government does not. Tyranny. Tyranny. Let's get busy.
Rick, more of a procedural question for those of us who are involved in COS. Let's say the convention occurs, a number of amendment proposals are sent to the states for ratification. Do the states not have the ability to call for state conventions for ratification?
No,
Help me understand that.
Congress sets whether it's a convention or state legislative ratification. That's Congress will set that. Is every time it's been done by states except once. And the one time was the repeal of prohibition. It's because they wanted it to go quicker. Because remember, a lot of states back then, maybe even most, had, biannual sessions. And so they would have to wait, in some cases, 2 years before they could do it, and they didn't want to do that. So they did a convention so it could be done very quickly, because there was an overwhelming sentiment in the country to get rid of it. But other than that, they would not do that in this case. No way. because Congress doesn't want these things to pass, right? So they're going to make it as hard as possible, and that means give it to the legislatures. That'll make it hard. Conventions that make it easier to pass, I suspect, than yes, sir.
Last question.
I don't know how.
I'll take, how many people have questions? One, two, I'll take 1, 2, 3. I'll do it in the time of one.
I
Go
don't know
ahead.
how many states are like Delaware, and I'll explain in a second. I know that there are two ways for the ratification of whatever comes out of the convention. And one is that the delegates, that the state legislators would vote.
Yeah, I was just talking about that.
Or that the state people would vote in
Yeah.
the states. And the Senate and the
Well,
Congress would choose the method.
Correct.
Delaware has their state constitution says that if the people are to vote on an issue like that there has to be elections, and the delegates or the votes cast have to be elected by the people. Are there any other states that you're aware of that have that? And I was brought to my attention working.
I don't know, but I think the chances of that are infinitesimal, that that's the way it would happen. Yes.
Rick, at gun shows and places where, we're promoting COS, I can't wrap my head around when Democrats pass by, that when I asked, when they were asked if they have any issues, like any concern, and they think everything is fine. And so and we.
Well, if you're winning, everything's fine.
Okay, you got a good point.
Okay?
So,
Yeah.
but yet, how do you crack that egg? I mean, how do you crack that nut? Because
Well, I mean, you look, one of the things I found out is, and you guys here in Maryland probably know this better than I do, which is just because what they do fails, that never changes their mind. I mean, I saw this in Washington all the time. They pass a program. I pick almost any federal program. It doesn't work. And you know what the response to it is? What's the response? More money. It doesn't work because it just needs more money. So you put more money in. Yeah, you need more. So it's like people with a conspiracy theory. You can't convince them that they're wrong because you can't prove a negative, right? It's like I heard the joke recently about Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, this guy was a big believer that Epstein had this file and everything. And unfortunately, he passes away, comes before the Lord. He says, okay, I have one question for you, God. Who's on the list? And God says, there is no list. And the guy says, I can't believe it got this high. Please don't be a conspiracy theorist. It is the most undermining thing to the movement of anything. Be a realist. Look at what's true. The conspiracy theory is just modern day Gnosticism. It's a heresy. It's not true. It's not of God. Just because the government's corrupt and they do bad things doesn't mean that everything's corrupt and everybody does bad things. Okay? Just don't go down that rabbit hole. You'll never get out of it. Last question.
One of the Bible commentators I read, Andrew Womack from Colorado, recently stated the third great awakening is already here and coming. What are your thoughts? Charlie Kirk touched on this, on the number of, especially young men, who are discovering that just critical thinking and tech thinking and IT and social media is not enough. They need more out of life. They're searching for coming back to our foundational roots. What are your thoughts as you see young people in this country?
I pray that that's true. I pray that it's true. And Charlie was doing an amazing job. There's no Charlie right out there right now who's going to do that. And there are people who are trying to take advantage of the hole left by Charlie, and they're doing some very dangerous things. And we saw this blow up the last week or so with Tucker Carlson. And it's a dangerous place to go. So I think you're right, young men in particular, who have been told that they're unnecessary, right? There's no really purpose for them in society anymore. You're not needed to marry. You're not needed to have children or to be a father. You're just, you know, man needs a woman needs a man like, what is it? What?
Fish needs a bicycle?
Yeah, a fish needs a bicycle. I mean, that's what the feminists said. But men now believe it, right? We've told our young men that they're pretty much testosterone charged, you know, bad guys. And that they're a net negative and that they're not needed. And men, you know, I know men and women read all these books, and one of the things you always read about men, what do they need more than anything else? And it's not love. Respect. This culture disrespects men. And a culture that disrespects men is not long for stability. And so I hope you're right. I hope that men are finding the answer. There is only one answer. We all know what that answer is. It's faith. And hopefully that happens. Like I can talk about this. I think you're right. The biggest thing we could do in this country is not COS. It's a revival. I 100% agree with that. And I think we should, to the extent we can, be all a part of that. But is it happening? You know, it's like anything else. When you're in history, you don't recognize what's going on while you're here, right? Now we now see what's happening here. There's this division that we're now seeing in this in society. But as I was saying before, it's been happening for 20, 30 years. It's been happening really since the 60s. And it's just now that we realize it, and you've lived through it and didn't realize it, because you're doing your work, you're raising your kids, you're doing this. Now it's just hitting us in the face. So we now see it. Maybe that's what's happening with the revival. Maybe it's happening, we just don't see it, or we don't see as many fruits. We'll see. But the point is, nurture it, support it, pray for it. All right, those are my 3 questions. God bless you all.